an unsurpassed and perfect Dharma is rarely met with even in 1,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Tim Wicks, and I serve as... Hello? There we go. Sorry about that. My name is Tim Wicks, and I serve as Tanto, or head of practice, at San Francisco's Zen Center City Center, just up the street. Thank you all very much for joining us. Thanks for those of you who are joining us online. Today, our speaker is Kogen Jamie Howell, and he was raised in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and Lubbock, Texas. He came to California in 1967 and began his Zen practice with Joshu Sasaki Roshi in 1979. After 4 years of study with Sasaki Roshi, Jamie came to San Francisco Zen Center, where he became a board member and began studying with Dairyu Michael Wanger. He was Shuso, or head student, in 2005 and given lay entrustment in 2011. He's since studied with Monya Cohen in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and Rachel Mansfield Howlett in Santa Rosa. He's taught at the San Francisco Zen Center and at Dragon's Leap Hermitage, and extensively on Zoom. Jamie lives in Noe Valley with his wife of 54 years, Heidi, who's here with us today, and his 16-year-old dog, Mala. His 3 daughters and 2 son-in-laws and 3 grandchildren live nearby him. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of faces I don't recognize. So, hi, everyone. I'm going to talk a lot about Rinzai and Soto Zen today, so I thought maybe I would define those terms a little bit for people and talk a little bit about koans and what koans are before I get into the meat of my talk. There were originally 5 schools of Zen in China, and 3 survive today. One of them, Obaku Zen, only has 1 temple left in Japan. And Obaku Zen is very aligned with Rinzai Zen. The other 2 are more prominent. Rinzai Zen reputedly emphasizes koan study over any other type of study. Koans are, what are koans? They're the folklore of Zen, they're parables, they're meditation devices, they're questions to be answered and questions to not be answered. And I'll give some examples of koans. The Soto Zen style emphasizes just sitting, which is formally called shikantaza. Shikantaza is just sitting quietly and letting the whole world wash over you. The world of the inside, the world of outside, the whole world is non-differentiated. It just is. But in fact, the Rinzai school uses both shikantaza and koan study, and the Soto school is known for using koans in some of its study as well. So it's not completely 100% one way or the other. Some famous koans, probably the most famous one is a monk asked Joshu, does a dog have Buddha nature or not? And Joshu said, moo. This moo is not just no, and not just nothing, but it's also everything. It's the whole world of interdependence. And as a Rinzai student, you must manifest that whole world of interdependence in your answer to your teacher. When I first came to California from Lubbock, I was coming from a small pond where I was Lubbock's leading beatnik. And I had fallen in love with things like Dharma Bums and On the Road, Jack Kerouac's novels, and Allen Ginsberg's poetry. And I was really attracted to that life. And I began to read Zen koans. First I read Paul Ripp's book, Zen Bones, Zen Flesh. And I began to read those koans, and they really touched me and sparked a deep interest inside of me. So in 1979, when I was about 34 years old, I went and did my first sesshin at Mount Baldy. A sesshin is a week-long meditation retreat, Zen style, no talking, sitting motionless for hours, and at the Mount Baldy Zen Center, letting shaven-headed monks beat you with sticks while you were just sitting there. So I didn't even know I was hit half the time I was hit. So I went and did my first retreat without ever having sat a period of Zazen before. I had no idea what was going to happen and no idea what I was going to do there. But there I was, in the middle of on top of a mountain with a bunch of shaven-headed monks, being hit with sticks, and I was given a koan. Sasaki Roshi was a little, small Japanese man who could manifest a huge lion in the Sanzen room. So meeting with Sasaki Roshi would go something like this. I should back up a little bit. I'm being rather unclear. Excuse me. The first time you would meet with Sasaki Roshi in his little room, he would give you a koan. The first koan that I got from Sasaki Roshi was, "How do you realize pine tree when you see pine tree?" I had no idea what he was talking about. But it became an object of meditation, and meditating on a koan, I digress all the time, so please bear with me on my digressions. Meditating on a koan is often boiling down the koan to a very short phrase that you can say to yourself on the out-breath. So meditating on how do you realize pine tree when you see pine tree is pine tree. On the exhalation, pine tree. And you repeat this over and over during your meditation periods, when you were brushing your teeth, when you were going to bed, when you were going to the bathroom. Pine tree. I thought it was all rather bizarre, but nevertheless, I went along with the program. We would get up at 3 at Mount Baldy, and we would begin our first period of Zazen at 3:15. So you had to be in your seat, in your robes, dressed, ready to go at 3:15. And you would sit, meditation, chant, have meals, or meet with the Roshi from 3:15 a.m. till 8:45 p.m. And then you would, if you were lucky, you'd get in bed at 9 and get a nice 6 hours worth of sleep. I would go to these meetings with Sasaki Roshi. Well, I should back up again, I digress. At a certain point every day, 4 times a day, the monks would say, "Sanzen," and you would run out of the room and you'd go to the waiting room. You'd run out of the Zendo and you'd go to the waiting room. And at the waiting room, you would line up and singly, you would visit the Roshi's room for 2 or 3 minutes, in which you would go in, bow to the Roshi, recite your koan, And he would ask you questioningly if you had the answer. My koan, how do you realize pine tree when you see pine tree? And Sasaki Roshi would repeat back, how do you realize pine tree when you see pine tree? And you would give him an answer, and often he would just say nothing and just ring the bell, which means you were dismissed, and you would make your bows and return to the Zendo. Or sometimes he would, if you were closer to the mark, he would say, 80%, back to Zendo. So it was very frustrating, but the frustration is part of the stress that builds to an answer. So frustration is it's very important, actually. So I sat at the sesshin at Mount Baldy with Sasaki Roshi, and I went home and I vowed never to do it again. Under any circumstances, I would not do it again. 3 months later, I went back. And for the next 3 or 4 years, I kept going back, sometimes often, sometimes annually, but I did maybe a half dozen sesshins with Sasaki Roshi over the years. Then there was a crisis in my family. One of my children got cancer. I have 4 children. And I wanted to sit more, and I wanted a sangha sangha is a congregation, a group of people that you sit with. And I wanted to be more involved in a center that was near my house and that I could visit every day. And I found out about San Francisco Zen Center, and it turned out that at 4:15, 4:30, 4:45 in the morning, it was only 10 minutes away from my house. So I started coming to San Francisco Zen Center first, wearing my Rinzai robes. I was very proud of my Rinzai robes. They're a little bit different than Soto robes, so I was very proud of my Rinzai robes. And for about 6 months, I didn't really meet anybody at San Francisco Zen Center. I just came and wore my Rinzai robes and then disappeared into the night. Finally, I became more comfortable in my Soto skin and went to the office and asked if I could be introduced to a lay teacher. And the office suggested that I meet with Michael Sawyer. So I began to see Michael Sawyer quite a bit, and he was a wonderful teacher. He really helped me during the period of time that my daughter was really sick and in the hospital quite a bit, and he taught me how to sit, counting my breaths, and a little bit of how to sit, just breathing. He was wonderful. But one day he came to me and he said, I'm going to move to Green Gulch. And I have another teacher for you. And I was introduced to Michael Wanger. Michael Wanger became my teacher for the next 30, 40 years and still is my teacher. He teaches me every day, his teachings. Michael and I became friends as well as the teacher-student relationship. We both loved sports, which is not something that you find in every day at Zen Center. We used to go to Giants games. We saw Barry Bonds' 700th home run together. We went to the Warriors games. We saw Sleepy Floyd go crazy in the playoffs. We had a wonderful, wonderful relationship. And Michael encouraged me to take Jukai. Taking Jukai is. I took Jukai with Reverend Zimmerman if you remember. And it was, taking Jukai is agreeing to take Buddha's rules, follow Buddha's precepts, become a member of the congregation, and agree with everyone, or in front of everyone, agree to take the vows of a Buddhist. You get a new name and you get a piece of Buddha's robe or that you sew yourself called a rakusu. And I was very, very poor at sewing my rakusu. I started my rakusu in 1985, and in the late 80s, when it came close to the late 90s, 14 years later, when it came time to take my Jukai, I had already missed about 4 Jukais. They scheduled Jukais once every year, maybe twice every year, and each time Michael would say, well, we'll do Jamie. And as it turned out, I never had my rakusu ready. I don't know if that was on purpose or if that was because I was inept at sewing. But whatever it was, in 1989, I was fiddling with my rakusu on the 3rd floor of Zen Center, and Blanche Hartman came up, and she said, are you taking Jukai in April? And I said, I don't remember if it was April or May or June, it was in the spring. And she said to me, let's see how you're doing. And then she looked at my rakusu, and she said, give me that. And she took it and she finished it to make sure that after 17 years, I would take Jukai. You know, I'm telling all this story about myself, but what I'm really doing is I'm trying to encourage those of you that are lay, those of you that are living at home, that have jobs, that have a family, that you too can practice in a way that becomes meaningful and profound to you, and you can have a solid practice where you can come daily and learn a lot about yourself, about Zen, and about its traditions, and about meditation. So that's the purpose of my talk. I should mention that. I'm just flying all over the place. I'm really not a very good speaker, but that's my intention to y'all. So I took Jukai in 2000. In 2005, I was Shuso at San Francisco Zen Center. And Shuso is the head student, and you get to learn how to become a teacher. You get to give Dharma talks, meet with students, ring the wake-up bell. Ringing the wake-up bell meant that I would be getting up at 4:15 in the morning, and John King, who lived in my neighborhood, a priest at Zen Center, was very helpful because he was always either calling me or coming over to make sure I was up at that hour. And then I would be at Zen Center by the time to start the wake-up bell in the morning. And so then I would do the wake-up bell, sit the first 2 periods of Zazen, go to service, clean the bathrooms, and then go home and get ready to go to work. And then after work, often I had soccer practice with my kids. And I would be finished with soccer practice and get back to Zen Center. Usually I would miss the evening Zazen period, but I would get back in time for dinner or meeting with students or giving lectures or whatever I was doing at that time. But I was exhausted, but being Shuso was one of the most glorious periods of my life. It was as much fun and as meaningful as the time I got married or on my honeymoon or the birth of my children. It was really a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing. So I started giving Zazen instruction on Saturday morning, and it was a tough Saturday because sometimes I would have Zazen instruction at 9:30 and then a soccer game at 11:30, and it was sometimes I would come to the Zen Center with my soccer uniform under my robes. So we had just kept going, and we just kept our Zen practice. Then in 2011, Michael Wanger and Sojin Mel Weitzman took me to lunch, and at that lunch, they asked me if I would like to have lay entrustment. And I had no idea what lay entrustment was, but it sounded good. So there was one hang-up. I had to sew another rakusu. So I took lay entrustment in 2011, and right after taking Jukai, right after taking lay entrustment, I started leaving San Francisco to go and give lectures and practice in other parts of the world. I did a practice period with Monja Koan in São Paulo, and I gave lectures and gave workshops all over Texas, which is my other hometown place. Then came the pandemic. Well, before the pandemic, in 2018, I sat a sesshin at Zen Center, and it was the end of the year sesshin, the Rohatsu sesshin that celebrates Buddha's Enlightenment Day. And I sat that sesshin, and I had a really difficult time. I had already had a back operation, and now my ankle was really bothering me. I turned out to have an arthritic ankle from all the soccer playing that I had done throughout my life. It felt like when I would put my ankle down on the cushion, it felt like somebody had put sand down on the zabuton, and it was very uncomfortable. And I decided that I couldn't really participate in the Zen Center's activities any longer, so through Abbot David Zimmerman and the Ino and the Tanto at the time, I gave a farewell Dharma talk on a Wednesday night, and that was my retirement talk. And then came the pandemic. During the pandemic, I found that I really wanted to meditate. It was a lot of things were happening in the world, and I felt that I could best serve it by meditating, and I found out about Zoom. Zoom was the answer to all of my problems. I could sit in my easy chair that my wife had bought for me at IKEA and put Zoom on and sit Zazen with people in Germany and in France, Australia and Argentina, Brazil and the East Coast, Bozeman, Montana, Albuquerque. There's people sitting Zen everywhere, and I really got to enjoy sitting Zazen with them. And as well as, in addition to my sitting Zazen with everyone, the classes I was taking and sharing with others on koans and other things really expanded. So I developed a very, very large group of friends and teachers that I met through Zoom, that we would study koans together, or Shobogenzo, Dogen's collection of essays. And that was very, very meaningful to me. And then my son took his life. And I don't know how much I want to talk about that now because it's such a deep subject. But to not acknowledge it is not right. But to acknowledge, I want to acknowledge it a little bit. There was a memorial service in the midst of the pandemic here at Zen Center. That was on Zoom as well. Reverend David Zimmerman led the service, and I'm forever grateful to him and to Vicki Austin and to all the people who participated in that. It was very healing. And as well as my Sangha on Zoom. People came out and sent us food and flowers and took care of us mentally and physically in a way that I had never anticipated. And I could just feel the love through everywhere. And it did a great deal towards healing me and my family, and I'm forever grateful. Today, I still sit a lot on Zoom. I don't sit much in person. My wrecked old, almost 80-year-old body, I'll be 80 on my next birthday, is not so adaptable to the half lotus and lotus positions that I was able to sit in my youth. And you can see my wobbly old walk up to the stage today, and my bows, my full bows being sort of wobbly. But I'm still loving my practice, and the practice is the center of my life. And it has been for 40 years, 50 years, and I'm so grateful for it and for all of you that have supported me in it. So I know it's really early. I'm a speed talker. But I don't really have much else to say. We could stand for a minute and then we could have questions. And I'd love to answer questions. That's my main thing here. Stand and stretch, folks. Thank you. Take your time.
If you have a question, please raise your hand. I'll bring the microphone over to you.
Don't make it too tough, Kim.
I won't. Thank you very much for your talk. When you started, you were talking about the Rinzai practice of working with koans, and I'm wondering if you still work with koans and what role they play in your current practice.
Yeah, I left out so much out of my talk. I had all these notes, and my wife rehearsed me over and over again, but of course I ran through it as fast as I could. When I took lay entrustment, one of the people who came to lay entrustment was a woman, Rachel Mansfield Howlett, which is a friend of mine. She is a Dharma heir of John Tarrant. And John Tarrant, as some of you may know, is a Dharma heir of Robert Aiken.
Sorry, I'm just going to pause. Is that okay that you don't have your microphone on? Can everybody hear? Does that matter? Oh, you do have it on?
Oh.
Oh, he does have it on? Okay, sorry.
I'll just talk louder.
That's great.
No. Did you hear what I said?
Yes.
Rachel. So I have a friend, Rachel Mansfield Howlett, that I've known her husband for a long time. She's a wonderful Rinzai teacher, Dharma heir of John Tarrant. And when she came to my lay entrustment, she took me aside and said, would you like to go through Hakuin's 1,000 koan curriculum? And she lives in Santa Rosa. And she said, you can come up to Santa Rosa once or twice a month and we can go through the koans one at a time. And I thought, do I have time for this with everything else that I'm doing? So I said, thank you very much, but I really appreciate Rachel and I love you, but I don't think I can do it. So the pandemic came. And one of the wonderful things about Zoom is that I can meet with Rachel Mansfield-Howlett every week. And I've been doing it for about 3 years. And we've gone through a number of the koan collections, as well as Hakuin's miscellaneous koans, which were formerly unknown to me. But I can see now that Sasaki Roshi based a lot of his koans on the miscellaneous koans. He just framed them in a different way. One of the koans I got from Sasaki Roshi was, how do you realize Buddha when driving on the Santa Monica Freeway? And that's just a remake of one of Hakuin's miscellaneous koans. But I didn't know it at the time. So Rachel has just been a wonderful eye-opener for me, and now we're going through Dongshan's 5 ranks, and that's rough. But it's really important and lovely. So I meet with her every Thursday, early in the morning.
Thank you.
Other question?
Hello, thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
We have a small group of lay practitioners who are in a Zen study group, and actually Sanjay is one of them and interested in doing koan study. So the question is, I'm wondering if koan study is possible without a teacher, and if so, do you have any tips on how lay students may do this?
Well, koan study is certainly possible without a teacher. There's so many different ways to study koans. It's not just through question and answer and sanzen. Dogen Zenji uses koans throughout Shobogenzo. But I have that's not mine. We have a koan group where we've gone through every classical collection of koans so far. We've done, we're doing Shinji Shobogenzo now. Do you know what one that is? Dogen has a collection of 300 koans that are also, they're redundant to some of the other collections in some of the cases. But we meet once a week. There's about a half dozen of us to a dozen, and we have two koans assigned a week. We each read the koan. We read the koans together, and then each student gives some interpretation of the koan, and it's a great opening for students, I think. You'd be welcome to come and try it with us and see if you like it, and then you could maybe use that model to help your peers. So talk to me afterwards, and we'll get your email address and invite you to one of the classes. It's Thursday at 4 o'clock. I don't know if that would work for you. But,
Excellent.
But
yes,
you'd
that
be
does
welcome to come. A lot of there's people here that are in the class. Peter Snyder, who is the Jiko today, is in that class, and you'd be more than welcome to come. There's many other models of ways to study koans. Koans are not merely devices to open you for question and answer, but there's other ways to use them.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Don't just shout out, Rob. Wait for the microphone.
Wait for the mic.
Rob, did I make enough mistakes for you?
Let's see if you can make another one.
Rob is one of my students, and I gave him a piece of advice once. Please make a mistake, because Rob is too perfect.
I have tried to live up to that piece of guidance every day, so I appreciate that. So going back to your original experience,
You're getting an echo, so I'm not getting you good.
So going back to your original experience at Mount Baldy, what about the koan practice there kind of gave you this lifelong engagement with the koans? Like, what did you love about them, or what was intriguing to you about them at that time?
Well, I think I was my first love, my first enchantment with koans came from reading Paul Reps in bed to Heidi. Heidi would hit me, and she had no interest in my koan. But the wonderful way things were stated and the metaphors and things that were used, and then at Mount Baldy, I loved the urgency. There's an urgency, especially when you're doing a Rinzai Sesshin, to coming up with an answer that, when you get the answer, it's so delicious. So, I also really like poetry, and they're poetic. A lot of them were very, very poetic. The answer goes on and on.
We have an online question.
And this question comes from Theodore, who asks, where does the temple end and the rest of the world begin? What is the line between monastic and lay practice?
This question comes from my nephew, I know it. My nephew, Theodore, if this is the appropriate Theodore, my nephew just took Jukai over Zoom. Mark Lancaster was the preceptor, and Michael Wanger attended, and it was so wonderful. So, Teddy, what's your question again?
The question is, where does the temple end and the rest of the world begin? What is the line between monastic and lay practice?
Don't make duality. Does he ever come back to that?
With a bow.
Oh.
Mr. Howell, given your approaching age, have you considered running for president?
There's a cat named Blackie that would be a much more suitable candidate for my party. But thank you for the offer. You're not the first to contact me with this.
Hi, thank you for your talk.
You're welcome.
Could you say a little bit about lay entrustment, what it is and why lay entrustment?
Now finally I'm stumped. You know, I belong to the Lay Zen Teachers of America Association, and if you put 5 lay teachers into a room and ask them what lay entrustment is, you'll get 5 different answers. To me, it's an acknowledgement of a lifetime dedication of practice. And it's a kindness. It's a kindness given to the person receiving it, and opening them to give kindness to the people that they're around. It's a flower in the midst of the Sangha. But I think it's still a little ill-defined. Each teacher, each center, each person that gives it has a little bit different expectation, and each person who receives it has a little bit different expectation of what it means. And so it's rather unclear. It'll develop into clarity, I think, in the next generation, but we're still struggling for the real meaning. I don't know I'm sorry I can't answer your question better.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any more questions?
We have another online question, this one from Deirdre. How does Zazen help one age graciously?
Graciously? I'm still working on being gracious. I think it's a mistake to think Zazen helps, but we age and we get to watch it with Zazen. We get to be more aware of it and enjoy it. Might as well enjoy it, right? There's nothing else to be done. But one time a Zen master said, Zazen is good for nothing. There's a lot of meanings to that. Good for nothing. Don't be tricked. It doesn't mean it's not any good. It's just good for nothing. But Zazen is particularly good for the older crowd. I seem to have more enjoyable Zazen than I've ever had. I just love listening to the birds. There's a question down here, I think.
I remember in your talk how you shared changing teachers. During your practice.
I'm sorry, you're getting a little bit of an echo.
Oh, yeah.
Hearing you.
So I remember during your talk how you shared that you had different teachers in your practice. When is the time when you realize that maybe it's time to change teachers, or you've gotten as much as you can from a certain teacher? And is that something that you should be evaluating in your practice, like, more often?
That's a great question. I have been blessed with having a lot of really great teachers. I didn't mention all of them. You know, I had a wonderful Dokusan with Pat Phelan when I was just beginning my Zazen practice. that I'll never forget. And I had a wonderful Dogen with Paul Haller once when I was really lost in a sesshin that I'll never forget. So teachers come out of the woodwork when you need them. I have never said that I was going to change teachers. Circumstances changed and the teacher appeared. Michael Wanger appeared when Michael Sawyer left. I had to stop going to Mount Baldy because I had a larger family and I couldn't leave my family for that longer time, so I found Michael Sawyer. Through circumstance, Michael Wanger, who's now in Enzo Village, is not available to me, so I see Rachel Mansfield Howell. I'm lucky. And sometimes it's appropriate for you to get advice from more than one teacher. Generally, monogamy is the best practice, but once in a while you get a perspective from a second teacher that you wouldn't have gotten. The thing is that once you find a teacher that you feel compatible with, you need to give yourself completely to that relationship.
Thank you for your talk. So could you share a bit more, when does the pine tree become pine tree?
Any other questions?
Lots of great questions coming in online today. This one is from Seishin, who wonders if you could expand a little more on the use of koans in Rinzai and Soto traditions, particularly the way you see them being used at San Francisco Zen Center these days.
Thank you for your question. I'm kind of stumped. You know, I have taken classes and taken workshops on koans at San Francisco Zen Center that were very meaningful to me. Okamura Roshi gave a seminar, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago on the koan. Joshu was asked by a monk, what is the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming from the West? And Joshu said, the oak tree in the garden. And Okamura Roshi gave, I don't know, it must have lasted for at least 2 weeks. And it was wonderful. So there's an opportunity for things like that to come up all the time. I remember taking a Koan class with Zach Smith that I thought was very enlightening and revealing. So there's opportunities to take Koan classes. I really am waiting for someone to take the 2 fascicles of Shobo Genzo about Yakujo and the fox and really take that in as a class. I don't feel capable of doing it, but I know Reverend Haller could do it if he wanted to. So I'm waiting for that. Shinshu, I'm sorry I can't adequately answer your question.
And this question, also online from Shannon. Do you think you would have pursued lay entrustment if you hadn't been asked? And why do you think you were asked?
I have you know, I have to confess something. About 3 years before I was Shuso, I asked Michael Wanger if I would ever be Shuso. I just wanted to know. I wasn't like pushing for it. I just wanted to know if I would ever be Shuso. And he said, sure, go to Tassajara and do a practice period, and you probably be the Shuso the next proximate practice period. And I thought, oh, okay. There's no way that a man who has a job, I was at the time a realtor, later became a sales manager in real estate, and 4 children and a wife and a mortgage and house payments and car insurance and et cetera, the whole catastrophe. Going to Tassajara was just not in the cards for me, so I threw it away and never thought about it again. And then 5 years later, 4 years later, I was asked to be Shuso. I never even conceived that they would ask me to have lay entrustment. I have no idea how they could make such an error. But it happened and it was done. That's all.
Any other questions?
Hi.
Hi, thank you for your talk.
You're welcome.
I actually had a similar question on the same vein as Seishin, just for, Soto's student who's, there's no gaining mind, nothing to attain. And then with Rinzai Zen, you're trying to get an answer from your sitting. At some level, maybe you're not trying to get it, you're waiting for it, or you're repeating something and then maybe something comes to you, maybe it doesn't, maybe it comes in a year, maybe it comes now. And I'm just curious how you kind of, from a Zen, like a Soto perspective, kind of reconcile the not gaining mind with Rinzai practice.
Well, as close as Rinzai and Soto Zen are to each other, like a good marriage, they don't understand each other. I don't know that I understand them either, since I'm not being very monogamous with either of them, but I think the promotion of a gaining idea in Rinzai Zen is to dissuade you from a gaining idea. So they start you out with trying to get you to gain, and then as soon as you start gaining, they'll slap you around and say, what are you doing? I only know Sasaki Roshi very, very well. I went back a couple of times later and was more open to what he was teaching. But he never acknowledged anybody's enlightenment or attainment or anything. He wouldn't even say you passed the koan. He would just give you a new koan if he was satisfied with your answer. So, what's the rest of your question?
That was mostly it. Just kind of, I think what you said that helped me was just kind of like, even if you're doing koan study and your teacher says, okay, yes, you got it, then you just get another thing and then you can't hang on to I got it and yay, look at me. And then, you kind of get it taken away from you in a sense, and then you kind of start over, and then there's nothing to gain.
Yeah, it's good that they take it away from you. You don't need a big head. My head is big enough to where it doesn't need any expansion. I think that I was under the misconception that Rinzai Zen wasn't as compassionate as Soto Zen. But now in my later years, I think Rinzai Zen has really opened me to the four great vows a lot, and I'm really grateful for their teaching of compassion, and it's subtle. It just kind of creeps up on you. But it's like Sasaki Roshi talking about walking around in the dew instead of the rain. You walk around in the dew and you don't know that you're getting wet until you're drenched. I think Rinzai Zen is a little bit like that, and my heart has been opened by both, but lately I've noticed it's been opened by Rinzai.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ino-san, for wandering around and doing all the hard work. May our intention be great, with it to let beings are